Welcome to the Izzy Chinche Show.
I've always been someone who's wanted to be great. And just in my everyday life, I want to be great. And that's still something that I want, but I've changed from wanting to be great to wanting to have great impact. And that's been kind of my mantra.
I'm so excited you're able to tune in. Join me as I interview athletes, entrepreneurs, and high achievers. I also share much about my life struggles, trials, and successes in hopes to inspire you. I intend for this show to be one of the greatest shows of all time, so your listening and support means the most to me. My goal is to help inspire as many people as possible, so please share with a friend if you enjoyed just one thing from today's episode. Together, we can help more people grow. Let's get started.
We're literally just going to have a bomb-ass conversation like we usually
Let's do it. Let's do it.
And there's no pressure at all. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, girl. Happy to be here.
I know. I'm excited. I have a lot of questions. And I'm going to go all over the place because that's what I always do. So that's why I was saying it's literally just conversation.
Yeah.
Back and forth, whatever you want. And then you can ask me whatever you want to ask me, and then we're just gonna vibe. So you start by telling me about just what you do and how you got into doing what you do.
Yeah. So I started as a speech pathologist. And so I started just kind of in the education system. I want to make an impact. I want to help kids.
Yeah.
So I really followed that path of how can I hone my skills and support others in their journey to communicating and advocating for themselves. And so that's where it started. But then I started getting frustrated with feeling like I wasn't doing enough and I was confined to a box. I was stuck in a high school, working all day, getting emotionally depleted. And I felt like there was so many things that I couldn't do. I was confined. And so then I started looking at sports, basketball particularly, and I was like, they have such a platform. Yeah. And I'm over here in the education system. What if we merge the two? And so that's when Language of Intention started. That's where I started the Hoop with Intention community, and then just tapped into the NIL space. And that's where things really started to kind of take off for me.
I love that. So when did you make that switch? So when did you graduate?
I went to San Diego State. I graduated with my bachelor's in 2019, my master's in 2021. And so I finished my master's during COVID. It was shut down. So I got a little taste of kind of remote work and how productivity could work. Yeah. Graduated in 2021 in San Diego and then moved to Austin to start my first job in the schools.
Okay. And now you're remote though, correct?
Yep.
And how did that switch happen? Where did it switch? How long were you in the schools and then you're like, this isn't working, I need to be remote so I can build my other thing?
Yeah. So I was working, so I did 2 full years in a Title I school. And Title I, it's under-resourced, underfunded, but for me, a lot of room for growth and a lot of room to pour in. So I did as much as I could in 2 years, tried to build programs, initiatives, community. And then honestly, I was like, all right, I'm burned out. So I switched to remote. And so now I still am a speech pathologist. I still fulfill and carry out my duties within the school system, but it's remote. And I'm doing a lot of their, a lot of the student paperwork, a lot of the parent meetings, school meetings and all of that. But then I also can focus on my own initiatives of creating larger community impact, not confined to a school.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about your definition of community impact and how that applies to your athletes and stuff. What is that in your world? What does that mean? Yeah.
Yeah. So what is community impact to me? It's giving back. It's creating waves of change, whether you are an athlete and can go talk to a group of high school students, whether you are a coach, you're a recruiter, whether, tomorrow we have an event where a good friend that I met through some of these community engagements, he's going to come, he's a news producer, and he's going to come talk to a group of kids about the power of networking. So for me, community impact is looking at all the moving parts and being like, hey, you do cool stuff, talk to this group of kids. Hey, you do cool things, why don't you connect with this partner? So it's really just creating waves of positive change and people that care about the community.
Yeah, I love that. That makes me think about like stuff on my end and where, you know, because I am in the soccer world. I do know so many teams, and just being like using that as an in, even like, hey, I would love to talk to your team about just like staying in the game, how to avoid burnout and stuff like that. And then yeah, you're actually having impact, but being intentional about it, not just like, because I'm very much like, I love to have that impact as I go through my day to day, like whatever. I'm always trying to be good energy, like bring the joy, but being intentional about it, that's like inspiring me. I'm like, ooh, I need to start thinking of where to leverage those kinds of things. Yeah.
Well, and then that's where kind of that resource leveraging framework comes in, because what I work with collegiate athletes specifically on is, hey, you're here in the middle. You have a lot of platform, you have a lot of purpose, you have a lot of buzz, a lot of people around you. Who can you pour into using your current platform, but also who can you pull resources from? So, for example, if you're a collegiate athlete and you have potential sponsors, hey, can I reach out to that sponsor and be like, hey, I want to do a youth impact event? So you're pouring into the communities below you that need resources, but you're using the resources above you. What does that do? It builds your brand, it builds your visibility, and then also it furthers your purpose and your impact. So whatever, like everyone has their thing. Like for you, it's soccer, right? For me, it's just kind of athletics community impact. For some people, it's, hey, I want to, I want to use my photography skills. Okay, there's people above you, there's people below you. Pour in and create impact in that way.
Yeah, I really like that, because I mean, just even in life, I feel like that's a good way to be. Like, I'm always looking for, looking to my mentors and asking like, what's your angle? Like, what do you think about this? And then also it's like, where can I also help people, from what I am learning and from my mentors, honestly. And then then I teach it to them, and like we can all rise together. I love that. What initially inspired you to start like those actually putting on events and in that world? Like what was the thing that you're like, okay.
Yeah. Like, are you saying tapping into basketball specifically?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So like tapping into the basketball world, it was like, okay, I'm working in the education system. I see failure, not enough resources, not enough hype, like all of this stuff. But then I'm coming home and I'm watching like the Longhorns men's basketball, and there's all these fans, there's all this attention. And I'm like, if we could get all those people that care about basketball to pour into this under-resourced school and help bring together, whether that's, when I say resources, I mean money, I mean time, I mean skill. Like we all have resources, an abundance of them. And so my first event was, I was watching the Longhorn season and I saw this athlete, Timmy Allen, and I was like, he has a story. His mom passed away from breast cancer, and he shares that story throughout his platform. So I was like, you know what? I want to talk to this guy. I want to hear more about it. And so that first event was, okay, what am I trying to do? So using the model, right? What am I trying to do? I'm trying to tap into the basketball realm. What do I have resource wise? I have, it was a high school that I still work closely with. And so it was like, I'm going to put on an event for that high school. We're going to bring Timmy Allen out, and then we're going to use the platform of what the Longhorns have. And so creating that first event was, I mean, it paved the way for me to start to tap into bringing these two worlds together. So at that event, we had educators speak, we had a bunch of student involvement, and then we had the athletes speak. Two of his teammates came, the coach came. So it was this big, like, feel good community event. And so to me, that was like my first event, and it hit. It was a success. And I was like, all right, now let's just duplicate.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. That's exciting. That makes me think about like even the high school that I work with, like, oh, maybe that would be a good thing to do. And that just like sparked so much for me. I was like thinking about that now. I love that. That's exciting. what is the feeling for you when you're actually in it, doing it? Like when you're actually there putting on that event? Because I know how I feel in those situations. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is it. Like this is why. Like, is it similar or what?
What is the Yeah, I mean, the feeling before my first ever event, truthfully, was I'm not good enough. I can't pull this off. Doubt, doubt, doubt. Like it was so much doubt. Who am I to come step in front of all these people? But once I was able to, like, step in front of all these people, speak and make myself known, like fear and doubt were the main things. But when I took a moment and I prayed and I was like, help me remember who this is for, because it's not about me.
Yes.
It's never been about me.
Yes.
I'm following impact. I'm
Yeah.
following pouring in. I'm following service. So when I think that it's on me to go up there and speak for myself and my image, I got to reel that in real quick and be like, pour into these kids. And the feeling that I felt after that first event of being like, kids got to have an opportunity where they met a community hero. I was able to help this athlete make the news multiple times. I was able to connect all these people that have a passion. The feeling I walked away with was just like purposeful. Like,
I love that.
like I can do hard things. And then it furthers my desire to tell little kids, young kids, and even just athletes, if I can do this and come from like a non-basketball world and drop a huge basketball event that makes the news, you can legit do anything, because I can't shoot a free throw. I can't make a hoop. Like that's just a known thing.
Yeah.
So your skills transfer is my biggest message for that one.
I love that. That gets me excited, but I really resonate with when it's not about me, it's so much easier to act, because I get in those spaces where I'm just like, being like, it's that thing that I said the other day. I was like, when I'm being self-conscious, I'm being selfish. And like, once I can get away from that, and I'm like, no, this isn't about me. This is about who I'm serving. I'm like, okay, I can do this. Because it's so funny. I went to a wedding last night, and last minute, like my outfit literally didn't work. And I was like, oh my gosh, like blah, blah, blah. And Mitchell was just like, no one's going there for you. He's like, they're not looking at you. And it was just good that he said that to me. And I was like, you're right. I was like, I really did not handle that well. I was like, thanks. But it's just like, stop thinking about myself. It's not about me. And then I'm like, I'm so much more on, because it's purpose. It's going back to purpose. Like, this isn't about me. This is about the impact. So I love that.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is like, it's not about us. It's never been about us. But as human beings, we always make it about us. Like, oh, they're looking at me, they're judging. Okay, they may judge or they may not. At the end of the day, it's not about us. It's about and I like to say this, like, it's about the impact that we leave. So when, at the end of your life, people are going to look at what impact did they make? What was their spirit? Not, oh my gosh, her voice this, or her outfit this, or she thought this about herself. All they're going to talk about is the positives, typically.
Well, that's if people are even talking about you after you're gone. You know what I mean? I even remember that. I'm like, dude, no one's gonna talk. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, no one, like, seriously, when we talk about like the posting thing, and like we're both doing that in that growth phase, and it's like, oh, I gotta post this thing, like I'm like, no one's looking at it the way that I am. And also, if they are, it doesn't matter. Like, like,
right. Well, that is the one piece that I share with athletes, though, is we can have this mindset of no one's going to remember us when we're gone, or we can say, I'm going to make sure people remember me when I'm gone. And the goal there is build a legacy. Because if you look at people like Kobe Bryant, he didn't show up, leave the earth, and then he was forgotten. So my aim is like, show up, use your skill, use your talent, make an impact, love people, connect with people. And that impact that you make, it actually will leave a legacy if you're intentional about it.
Yeah.
And I know you, I know what you're doing. And you can sit there and say, oh, no one's going to remember me when I'm gone, but I'm scratching that out. That's a no.
Well, sometimes that helps me, though. That helps me. I'm just like, okay, this, whatever. But also something else I was thinking about when you were saying before you're going into like put on that event, when I did my first presentation to a junior college team on like how to get recruited, I started like the self-doubt started like creeping in. And I went to the mirror and I looked in the mirror and I just like, I visualized like all this struggle, like everything I'd been through in my entire career. And then went like all the way back to like little me. I literally pictured like little Izzy and I was like, you're enough. You got this. And then I was like, okay, like bring it back in. But I think people literally don't realize like if you could actually like make it like tangible, like really break it down, then realize why you are qualified, and then like look at yourself as a kid and be like, what would you tell your little self? It's so much more encouraging than like what I'll tell myself now. But if I visualize myself like little Izzy, I'm like, you got this, like you can do this, especially working with kids.
Yeah. So that loops back into kind of what we had touched on earlier, which is the idea of mentorship, because a lot of people look for mentors, but they're not looking for mentees or someone to pour into. Because what I find is that I grow, I learn, and I expand way more rapidly when I have to not only teach, educate, empower. Because if I tell myself with my self-doubt, oh, you're not capable of doing this, you're not qualified, it's just me versus me. Like there's not anyone to check that. But when I hear a little girl tell me, Miss Delaney, I can't do this, it's too hard, they whatever, yeah. I can check that so quickly and reroute, because little me needed someone to do that. There was no one there to do it. So now I do it for all of these young individuals. Yeah. But what does that teach me? Hey, if I'm going to talk that talk, I better be walking it, and I better actually be about it. Because if I'm sitting there telling you, you walk into that gym as a girl and be the only girl in that gym, and you're going to put in work, you're going to record your content, you're going to do what you need to do to build yourself and your brand, but I'm not doing the same, they're not going to come to me. So what do? And I've told you this. I go play basketball. First of all, I'm not a hooper, but I go play basketball in the gym as the only girl to prove to myself and those that I serve that, like, do it anyway. Even if it doesn't make sense, even if you're not qualified, do it anyway.
I love that. Yeah, no, that reminds, like with my team that I coach, like it's funny, every time I'm on the bench, so I'm doing like bench press, I think about everything that I teach my team while they're training, about like being able to like work hard, being able to push through those tough moments. I'm like, if I am not actively doing that in my workouts every single day, I'm a hypocrite, because I literally coach this. I coach people, like I coach kids every single day how to work hard to get what they want. I'm like, if I'm not doing this, like I'm the biggest hypocrite. So I love that too. I'm like, can't do that.
But it's so much easier to coach others than to coach yourself.
Yeah.
Like, because even if you think about you and I call you and I'm struggling, you're going to coach me. But then when you call me and you're struggling, I'm like trying to give you the advice that you just gave me, or vice versa. Like, it's so much easier to give advice, give advice and coach, but you have to be about it. Like, I think the best leaders are the ones that are actually about it, and they're breaking those barriers that they don't even think they can break, but they're doing it anyway. And I've heard a lot about this idea of act as if, like, okay, act like you are qualified until you are. Yeah. And that's where you'll get to where you want to go.
Yeah. I love that. As if, act as if. Yeah. I literally listened to a podcast this morning with Mel Robbins, and she was talking about the same thing, like when reversing anxiety, like when you think about the worst case scenario, she's like, well, what if I think it was literally, she's saying, what if the best thing happened? Like, should literally just switch it and then imagine that instead. And then you're like, okay, I'm over it. Like, I seriously can't. I'm still like shocked how often I will get anxiety about like stuff that I'm doing, or like not even anxiety, but just like how much self-doubt will come in about certain things that I'm doing and I'm building. And I'm like, why? Why? I'm like, I reroute it so often. I'm like, all right, that's just like, I obviously need to build up more confidence within me so that I can start to let that go away. But I'm like, wow, it's impressive to watch it come back. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Well, and that reminds me of my first event that I did, where I'm like, well, what if this? And I need to perfect it. And I had this whole planning method of making sure everything went perfect. and it went great. The whole conversation went great. I had zero stress. Like it was just flowing. And then even after the event, I'm asking all of my partners, is everything okay? Is everything like, I was seeking something to be wrong. Like I was like, did someone get their feelings hurt? Did someone say something that offended someone? And they're like, Delaney, everything went great. Like accept it and celebrate it. And I was asking for feedback, and it's like, no, take the moment. Like, and I think that's the biggest thing. Take the moments as you have them, because you're going to rob yourself from it's almost like we need to stop being surprised when we win, because that doubt, that
so good. Stop being
that
surprised you win. I love that. Yeah.
Because it's the pre-doubt. It's before I doubt, but I push through. But then when you do it, are you taking time to celebrate your win? Are you even acknowledging it as a win? Because
yes.
I will get into this like, okay, did that, next. And it's like, no, did that, pause, celebrate.
I
think about how far.
feel like I still need to do that about launching my podcast, because I had it was very like, was a week ago today I launched, and I had this like, it was emotional for me, and I was like, I kind of celebrated it, but I was like, no, I still want to go back and be like, I really want to appreciate that and celebrate that, because exactly, like, you gotta pause. And like Brendan Bouchard, like, he talks about that. He talked about that at Growth Day. He was like, if you're not celebrating the little wins, like, you'll never celebrate anything. Like, nothing. You have to celebrate them as they come.
Well, and the other thing is, like, you also can't wait for other people to celebrate you, because I remember I had this intention that, like, after the event it would stay relevant, or just, and I can almost tie it into athletes, like after you win a championship, that's going to stay relevant. And sometimes that platform and that hype, it'll die down. So it's your responsibility to continue to celebrate yourself, because what I have to do is not only plan for the future, but reflect on the past. Because when I'm sitting doubtful and I look at, okay, wait, look at where I am. Let's be realistic. A year ago, did I think that was possible? No. So reflection and setting goals, I think, are all part of kind of the celebration. For ourselves.
I love that. I think that's also like, it's hard for athletes, I think, in season. And especially because it's like, okay, even if we do that, win that game, we're back at practice tomorrow, prepping for the next game. And it's like, that's a very interesting dichotomy. Like, how much do you, while you're in it? And I think it really comes back to enjoying the process, enjoying every day, and not getting so caught up in like the next thing, but really like, hey, we won tonight. That was awesome. I'm going to go enjoy practice tomorrow because we won last night, instead of like, you know what I mean? The next thing. But I think just, pausing, enjoying, staying present.
Right. Well, it's in the entrepreneurship journey. It's in the travel journey. Like, in people like myself or people that I'm around, you're always chasing that next thing. So for athletes, it's that next win, that next game, that next level. I remember when I was in undergrad, I couldn't wait to be a grad student. And then I graduated. I couldn't wait to be in the real world. And then you start realizing, like, oh, me, like, being so attached to the future, and once I get there, then I'll feel this. You're actually robbing yourself of, like you said, the actual journey, the actual process itself.
Yeah, no, 100%. I love that we're both like stepping in. I mean, I was literally thinking about that this morning. I was like, I feel so happy. I've just been waking up like freaking happy. And it's because I've stopped. Like, I still have my vision and I have my steps for my vision, but I'm trying to literally be like, it's Monday, baby. It's podcast day. Like, I'm stoked, and actually enjoy it, because I'm like, this is something to be enjoyed. I truly, truly believe if I was 99 years old and I could come back to today, I would probably give every single thing that I had, or in the future, like, would give it up to be able to come back to today and be able to do it in like my young body. And like, you know what I mean? I genuinely believe that. And I try and think about that. Like, I'll literally pretend I'll wake up and I'll pretend that I just like came back from being 100 and like it's my day. I am not kidding. I do that. I seriously do that. It's the best. You should try it.
I love that. You know, the other day I was working out and it was Pilates. It was so hard. My muscles were so activated. It was this sense of like absolute discomfort and pain.
Yeah.
And instead of being like, ow, this hurts, ow, this sucks, there was people in the room that were like verbally like, come on, hurry up, I hate this. I took a moment to be like, I literally just started saying, God, thank you for the fact that I have a healthy body that I can do this. Like, I feel that our mindset carries so much weight, and I can slip into that of like, I have so much that I have to do today. I have all this that needs to be done. And it's like, oh, wait a second, I'm trusted to do this. And I've built a life that I get to do all these things. Like, that's a game changer with that gratitude piece.
Yes. Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah. Well, I even think about like, oh, I have to eat. I have to make sure I eat. I'm like, gosh, there are so many people who just don't even have enough food. And I'm like, oh, I have to make time to eat. I'm like, are you kidding me? I have food. Like, I'm not ever in a position of like not having enough food. I will always be able to have it. Like, just even that in itself, I'm like, gratitude. I literally did a gratitude meditation this morning. I was just like, wow, I have so much to be grateful for. And that's what helps you stay present.
Well, and that loops back to community impact, because if you keep striving and striving to hit the next level and raise yourself up and raise your platform, but you're not grounding yourself with things that highlight the disparities or things like food insecurity, there's so many different things. If you allow yourself to get too far removed from it, you're not going to value the entire process and the entire journey, nor are you going to be well-rounded enough to sit in rooms of people that come from all different walks of life. And I think that's something that I focus a lot when I'm looking at leaders and people that I want to highlight their stories. It's how do you continue to raise your platform, but stay grounded and humble? Because gosh, like that, not everyone's doing that.
Yeah.
Not everyone, once they start to make it, is keeping themselves grounded and pouring back in. And to me, there's greatness, and then there's like legacy, there's legends, and the legends are the ones that they take their skill and their talent, not just to increase their income, but to increase their impact. And that for me is like the key. Like, that's what I try to tell every kid and everyone, like, pour back. You got to pour back.
I love that. I think something that stood out to me when you mentioned that was like, I've always been someone who's wanted to be great. And just in my everyday life, I want to be great. And that's still something I want, but it's changed from wanting to be great to wanting to have great impact. And like, that's been kind of like my mantra. Like, and that was for me, like my transition, my big identity shift from being a soccer player to really a coach and an entrepreneur was like, for me, soccer was all about being great. I wanted to be great, and then shifting to like, no, I want to have great impact. I still want to be great, but I'm like, I want to have great impact. You have to be great to have great impact, I believe, but like, it's just it's a huge shift, because it's not so much about like self-glorification. It's like, no, I want to impact the most, because that's what I feel I'm called to do.
And that's difficult. And I find this for me, like as a woman, is how can I be confident, but not too confident? Like, because for me, my confidence comes from the fact that I know that any success I achieve, I will pour back. Like, I am going to pour back into the community. So sometimes, and this is a recent conversation that I've had with someone on Instagram, they were like, you're so confident. And I'm like, no, I'm not confident across the board. I'm just confident in this niche, because I know if I take off here, the impact that I can make is only going to expand and expand. Yeah. So I think it's being intentional too with like your confidence, your delivery, your interactions with people, because only you know the impact you're capable of making. So you have to be strategic, and sometimes being strategic about how your impact is going to take off isn't always clear to other people's eyes. So you have to just trust that you have the vision, You have the skills, and honestly, do what you got to do to get there. I don't care what you do, just do it because there's people that are relying on your impact.
I love that. Yeah. No, that's so funny because like when you connected with me on Instagram and then I saw your stuff, I was like, man, this girl is on it. She is so, you know, like, cause you put out that energy and I absolutely love that because then it inspires me. I'm like, okay, I got to put it too. But then it's like people don't see the behind the scenes of like you and I calling each other 5 times a day, like, I'm losing my mind over this. I'm tripping out over this. Like, I got to get out of my own way. And I was talking to my entrepreneur friend last week, and he owns like a pretty big business. And we were talking, and he was like, the entrepreneur journey is a roller coaster. And he was just like, the first part is literally just like ding, 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 like every single day. And then he's like, you finally get to a point where you get to the launch pad. It's a little more chill. And then you can kind of like take off. And I was like, yep, I'm still in that roller coaster phase.
Yes, it's so true. And I think social media is something you and I are both learning a lot about. It's something where you really have to be intentional and you really have to be strategic, where someone like me stepping into the world of sports, although I come from education, I have the skills and I have the tools.
Yeah.
If I just come and here's a funny story. When I started my business, I was reaching out to agents, being my true authentic self. Hey, my name's Delaney, this and that. I would love to work with you, share impact, like who I truly am.
Yeah.
But I realized the audience that I was outreaching to wasn't feeling it. So I don't know if I ever told you this. My first contract that I ever got, I changed my name and my signature to Lane. So it sounded gender neutral. And I changed from, hey, I'm Delaney, da, 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 to, hey, I want to know the athlete's price. Let me know. And I got a response. I got the athlete signed. So part of it is you kind of got to reel people into how they vibe with you. Because if I'm working with athletes and I'm working high performance, they don't want to hear all my fluffy emotions all the time. But to get to where you want to go, you kind of got to do the emotion work with me. Yeah. So I think it's a matter of knowing your audience and who you want to impact too, and speaking their language.
I love that. You did tell me that, and I was like, that's pretty savage. And I know that where it's like you have to do that. I've actually teetered on, I've gotten less intense because I was like, okay, I think I'm a little like, not that I don't believe I'm too intense and I love my intensity. It's just reframing it to certain people that you're talking to and realizing I want it to come off a little more encouraging than like, hey, it's not good enough. It needs to be better. So I think I switched a little bit the other way of like, all right, let's be a little bit fluffier, and not because I'm like compromising like who I actually am, but just like, oh, I'm just going to step into that side of myself. Like, I know I have a little bit of that softer side. I'm going to just like leverage that a little bit. Not that I'm changing, you know, who I am. And I bet for you, it's like, you're just tapping into a little bit of your like hardcore business side, you know?
Yep. And that's what it is, because, and I love that you kind of call it these different sides of ourselves. And this is a conversation that I actually had yesterday is, first of all, we're very multifaceted people. So for me, I have my real soft, real feminine side. Yeah. And I also have my high performance, like I'm here for business. I'm talking this way. It depends on who I'm talking to and why. And then you think about my business. It's called Language of Intention. Yeah. The whole thing as a speech language pathologist is using the right wording, language, communication to appeal to your different audiences. So when I'm working with my, you know, my female athletes that are in the high school setting and they're looking for mentorship, I don't have to talk to them a certain way, but to get my respect out there in a certain type of way, I gotta play the game. So it's all the strategy. And that's one thing I think athletes don't have as much as guidance on the strategy behind really nurturing what their heart wants. And a lot of them say, I just want to provide for my family. That's what I hear the most. And it's like, well, if you want to do that, there's kind of strategy that has to go behind it, because you have coaches that want this from you. You have agents that want this from you. The community wants this from you, but what do you want for you? And how are you going to do it and execute with strategy?
Yeah. No, I love that. That resonates. I'm like, yep, 100%.
Yeah, girl.
Yeah. And just that like we both talk about that, but I'm a big believer in it comes down to self-promotion and remembering that we all have two sides of ourselves, right? There's our performer self and a normal self. And because I was like, man, am I not being authentic to like me in certain settings when I am? Because someone's like, man, that seemed really intense. Actually, one of my coaches, like he told me that. He was like, yeah, I'm not sure that was like fully authentic to you. He was like, it didn't resonate with me. And I was like, yeah, but that's me actually. That is me. And that's my hardcore side. I pushed back and I was like, that's just a different side of me. And I was like, and I love that side of me. And maybe it's a little too intense for you. And I was like, that's fine. But that's a side of me that I will never push away just because it's too intense for other people. I've just been like, in order to promote myself in certain ways, I'm like, all right, we got to like drown that down a little bit, not show that side, show the other side a little bit more and then come forward. But it's like, I almost was like, oh shoot, is that too intense? I was like, no, it was too intense for you. So you're not ideal for me.
And I think it's the balance, right? It's the balance piece of like, and it goes back to intention. What is your intention? I think what people see on Instagram is people that don't know me that are being like filtered then through that piece of me. If you meet me, I'm the opposite. I'm feminine first. You probably will never even see my like masculine or dominant side. But on Instagram, if I'm trying to attract a certain demographic, I'm masculine performance first. So I think we all have like so many of these different facets, like you said, like that's just a side. And so it's like play your side. But hey, I also was told as a little kid that like I was too bossy, I was too this. But that's the problem with education is that we start picking out these things in kids and we say, oh, you are this, and we label them instead of saying, wait, okay, if someone would have told me you demonstrate strong leadership skills rather than you're bossy, and then mind you that I'm now running a team of 5 women that is going to continue growing and building, and I'm pouring into them and their emotional health. If you would have just told me that, you know how much tears you would have saved me? Because I'm sitting here thinking my whole life, I'm too bossy, I'm too this, and then I'm thinking I'm wrong. So I go into this little soft era where I legit slip into a silent depression and I just cry every day trying to serve kids. That's all I did. Instead of trying to be like, you know what? I'm a fierce advocate and I'm going to do it. How I want to do it. I want to do it.
Oh, I love that. I am so in alignment with that because like kids that I coach, like I try and be so mindful of what I tell them. And like one of the things that I do not tell my kids, I never ever call them lazy. Ever. Parents call their kids lazy way too often. And then I did it, and I know because I see it and I hear it, and they're like, oh, you're being lazy, they're too lazy. I'm like, no, at the very most, I'll say, hey, you're not lazy, don't act lazy. You're not lazy, don't act lazy. I know you're a hard worker. I say it to them like that. So then they're not enforcing like, oh, I'm lazy, I'm lazy, I'm lazy. But it's like to be so careful what you say to kids, because like I think about stuff that I've internalized, like just that I heard like 1 or 2 times. And I was like, I've definitely been on this other side of that, of being like, I'm too intense. Like, especially when I heard it from one of my coaches, he was like, it's just like too intense. It seems kind of out of alignment for you. And I was like, that's actually like the real me, like of me. Like I am freaking intense and I love it and I will use it.
Right. And then we have to remember that they're kids, right? Because I can be intense in the context of social media or my opinions when it's you and I, adult to adult. But if I'm talking to a kid, I feel like something that's wrong in the education system and even just the coaching world is not seeing every kid human by human. And so there's athletes that I work with, there's kids that I work with, I will not treat them the same way in any capacity. If I saw, like for me, when I see something, they're off, I'm going to be like, hey, you seem off today. Everything okay? Because maybe their performance has nothing to do with their performance and it has everything to do with their mental state and emotion. And so I think there's also this like I always say, like, what is your intention? And if our intentions are to grow and build connections, with humans, then there's certain kids where they want me to be really real with them. Hey, you need to push harder. But 95% of the time, the way I'm speaking to athletes is very gentle, very, hey, why do you think that about yourself?
Yeah.
So I think that
They already have the other, sorry, I cut you off, but they already have the other side of like so hardcore on them, and they're already so hard on themselves that a lot of time I'm like, that's not what you need from me anymore. Like I am that, usually I'm like their third or fourth coach that they see because they have their head coach and their assistant coach on their actual team. And then they're working with me and I'm like, oh my gosh, we just got through the warm up and you're crying. What's wrong? Do you want to talk about that? And it's like, they don't need that hardcore side. So that's where I'm like, that's where I don't need to be as intense. But then like other players, I'm like, you're just not tough enough because no one's been tough on you. So I love that you're able to like go about them differently.
Yeah. And I think like, it's not, there's levels to this is the way to say it. There's levels to this, but at the same time, like, honestly, I treat youth and NBA players very similar. I treat them like a human being and I ask them about their emotions, and that then helps me coach them. And so I think a lot of kids and a lot of parents, I think that they forget that like that we're humans, we're still going to have emotional feelings. Like we still, even though we're an athlete, I'm not an athlete, but for people that are, like, even though that you are an athlete, that doesn't mean that you don't internalize, that you're not going to think about a comment that was made to you for the rest of your life. And, I have an NBA client that I work with, and it's like, he still doubts himself. Yep. He still feels like he isn't doing enough. And it's like, do you think that just because you make it to the NBA, you suddenly, all that doubt is gone?
Yeah.
So it's a matter of like keeping things into perspective. We break through those levels and we continue to rise. But as leaders, we got to figure out what works for those that we pour into.
Yeah. What's some of like your biggest limiting beliefs that you have that let's go with some of them that you've kind of broken through recently or in the past year?
These are deep and these are deeply rooted. And this is the kind of work that I do with athletes. And I have chills thinking about it, because these are limiting beliefs are so rooted in identity. And one that I was thinking about last night was like, who do I want to become? And it's exactly who I am. I just want to be comfortable with that person. And so a limiting belief is, I'm a 26-year-old female that's never played a sport. Well, I take that back. I've played high school sports, but I've never played a collegiate sport. And I think that therefore makes me not qualified to pour into the organizations that I am, whether that's, AAU, whether that's collegiate sports, whether that's the NBA, but that's a limiting belief, because when you start looking at my data, it proves otherwise. But I'm still lagging in that I want to keep myself stuck at, wait, I can't get my respect there. And I don't know, I'm not worthy. And that comes from what I heard as a young kid, is that like, for me, a lot of my limiting beliefs are around belonging in spaces, having a right to be in spaces, feeling like my intellectual knowledge is trusted or valuable. I'm trying to think, like, what would I think my biggest limiting belief would be this idea that I have to do things in a way that I've seen done to feel fulfilled. Yes. And the truth is, there's not a single other person out there that is doing or has done what I want to do and achieve the results I want to achieve. And I say this because there's so many kids out there with these talents, these platforms, these resources, but they come up with these ideas and then people say, well, what about this? How about that? So for me, it's pushing through. Just because it hasn't been done doesn't mean it's not going to be done. I just have to follow the path.
You're going to be the first person to do it your way. And that's something that I came across in my soccer career, because I knew I was like, I got told early on, you started too late. You didn't start playing club until you're 14. It's not happening. You will never go D1. Like I got told those things. I had coaches who like, for whatever reason, like to dog on me and like say those things. I had some great coaches too, but that, and then like, I had a lot of injuries. Like I had 2 ACL tears, and then I had like a lot of things come up. And then I switched my position in college from a forward to a goalie. And I was like, I'm going to be the first person to do this my way. I'm going to be the first person to overcome, 2 ACL tears, not play club till they're 14, not play the position till they're 18, almost 19, and have a major quad tear and still go D1. I was like, I'm going to be the first person to do it at least that I know of. Cause I would look for other people. I'm like, oh, did they do it? Like, is that possible? Like, can I? And I was like, I'm going to be the first person to do it my way. And that's same for you. Like, you're going to be the first person to do it your way. And that's why I love it. And that's why I try and teach other kids. I'm like, you're going to be the first person to get recruited your way, in your story, like your timeline, your journey. And I'm like, pumps me up.
And you know what? Something that just like warms my heart too. And I get chills like if I'm having deep combos. So clearly we're in the thick of like the good stuff because I keep getting chills. Is you do it your way and the right people will come. And once you start to get in alignment where you said, I'm the only one doing this, you'll actually find that there's a lot of people that are doing maybe not the same thing, but similar things. You and I, for example, think about how our daily life looks relatively similar. We have similar goals, very different execution, very different demographics, audiences. But you start to find those people once you start getting, number one, vulnerable and sharing your story,
exactly.
stepping into spaces. And then I want to share a little bit of, you have me, right? I come from speech pathology and I'm stepping into the basketball space.
Yeah.
And then you have people that are the very opposite. So for example, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, who is a former NBA player, he started in the NBA and he's now doing a ton of speech language pathology advocacy work.
Oh,
so
wow.
Him and I, we started in different worlds and we switched, but now there's so much overlap because I've spent my life studying speech pathology and serving. He has his whole basketball background and career, but he's also an individual that stutters. And so him and I mean, you'll see in the future the way that if you just trust your path, the right people will come.
Yep.
And so
I love that.
It's wild. We're all human beings, and I don't know, we all have such a story to share. I think the difference between doing it your way, well, I'll say this. I think the difference is when you share your story and you actually get vulnerable, like me hearing that from you, that's the difference. Some people do it their own way or they doubt, but they never come back to make a podcast. They never come back to do a community event where they're then speaking in front of a group of kids. Like, if you don't come back and share the adversity that you faced to be like, look where I am now, you're kind of wasting the adversity that you faced. You got to use it.
Mic drop. That was so good. Don't
use it.
The adversity that you faced. I absolutely love that. And it rhymes. Like I love that. I've been thinking about that a lot recently because I was talking to one of my friends and she was bringing up, like, we used to be roommates and we went through like a really hard time in college, just like financially and everything. I was like 4 years ago. And I was like, I just never pictured myself actually talking about that because I was like, oh, that's like embarrassing and not something that you want to talk about. And I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? That qualifies me because I came back from that. I came back from living in my car or whatever and like trying to figure out how to shower at the gym. Like that's the shit that actually qualifies me, not disqualifies me. But I love that. Like, don't waste that. And that inspires me to just like share more. And that's like this whole podcast. Like, I've been trying to be so honest and vulnerable about everything. Like, dude, this is it. Like, this is my actual life. Like, this is the truth. It's not all perfect. Like, these are the things that I've overcome. These are the things like that we've overcome. Like, I want it all out there. And it goes back to what you said, being vulnerable.
Yeah, girl. I feel like vulnerability is key. It truly is. It's the vulnerability is really what frees you. Because I also have my handful of things that still limit me. And I think it's a matter of share at your own pace and share on the platforms that you feel comfortable with. Yeah. And start, even if it's just sharing with a friend your story, because what we do is we create separation and difference. And, if you and I didn't hop on the phone and talk about the real emotions behind everything all the time, like all we're doing is putting out the business. We're not actually nurturing ourselves, because when you start a business, this, your identity is tested. And so athletes too, like you factor in NIL, you factor in endorsement deals, you factor all these pieces in, that's when your identity is tested. Because I have athletes that'll tell me like, oh, I probably can't get a deal. And I'm like, yeah, you say that, you probably won't. But if you start saying I'm worthy of a sponsorship and a deal, what is my action plan to get it? Then you reframe the script. So it's being vulnerable, but being vulnerable with a plan and at your pace, but also being the one that determines that and not doing it on other people's terms.
Yeah. I love that you said with a plan. Yeah. Cause then it's like, oh, it's like, all right, you're just trying to launch your mess on people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you be vulnerable with the wrong people, and that can ruin you. You be vulnerable with an unsafe person, and that can shut you off from ever wanting to be vulnerable again. You have to find the people that can hold that space for you. And so with athletes, luckily, I get to, have the honor of holding that space. They trust me. They feel comfortable opening up. And on the outside, I respect them and I show them, oh, this is now we're going to push. But hey, when the tears come, I'm also holding the space for them in that capacity.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
There's levels to this, girl. I'm just glad we're tapped in, because
yes. Thank you. Well, thank you for hopping on, and thank you for being vulnerable and everything, because this was awesome. You're practicing what you're preaching for sure.
Oh, appreciate you. Mwah.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm so grateful for your support. I'm already excited for the next show. Turn on notifications and be on the lookout for my next episode. Also, please share the show with anyone you feel like might benefit from listening to. Thank you for all your love and support. I will see you soon.